Spaceballs changed the way people looked at Star Wars forever. It changed an iconic film into a mind-blowing comedy with melted cheese and even jam. Yet the film almost didn't make it to theaters. These are 15 shocking facts about Spaceballs that will blow your mind. And as a bonus, I'll reveal exactly when Spaceballs the sequel will be released. So, sit back and let's rewind time. Number 1. Let's face it, big-name Hollywood actors are often the reason a movie becomes a blockbuster. And for this parody ripoff, Mel Brooks wanted a big-name actor. More specifically, he had his eyes on Tom Hanks and Top Gun star Tom Cruise. Both men declined the role, perhaps not feeling that parody was in the best interest of their careers. Next on the list was Bill Pullman, mainly because he was yet to star in a blockbuster, and he was more affordable than these two megastars. So, Pullman got the role, and his on-screen chemistry with Rick Moranis and John Candy was just something else. Who knows if the two Toms could have pulled this off? Number 2. Following the successes of Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, among many others, Mel Brooks was thinking about something different. He had ripped off the horror niche, the western niche, and now he was about to take on the sci-fi niche. However, looking at the movie doesn't reveal much about how the $5 million budget was spent. It looks low budget to anyone who has ever viewed the film, so where did all the money go? Well, Brooks respected George Lucas so much that he hired Lucasfilm to do all the post-production work on the film. This probably cost him an arm and a leg, but helped to turn the film into a true blockbuster. Yet, George Lucas still gave him one very important rule. Number 3. Creating a parody ripoff is not that easy. Producers and studios need the approval of the original film owner if they want to use the intellectual property. This was one problem standing right in front of Mel Brooks. But he swallowed his pride and asked George Lucas to avoid being sued for the production. Lucas reluctantly agreed, giving the green light for the film's production, but with one very clear condition: no Spaceballs merchandise. Yet, Brooks saw an opportunity and made sure to remind Lucas of how he felt about not being permitted to create merchandise. Ironically, this flamethrower became iconic and even more popular than some real Star Wars merchandise at the time. But it wasn't just a bunch of morons like a British film a few years earlier. Number 4. Mel Brooks is known for his uncanny titles. Blazing Saddles and The Vagrant are just a few, but his original idea for Spaceballs was to have it titled Planet Morons. Unfortunately, a British film titled Morons from Outer Space was released in 1985, and it completely took the wind out of his sails. So, Brooks had to sit back, regroup, and come up with a new title. He knew the word space needed to be in the title, especially for marketing purposes, but this wasn't about to work by itself. So, Brooks fiddled with the word screwball, a play on the type of film being produced, and the title was later turned into Spaceballs. That explains why the dark helmet had such a ball-shaped design. Speaking of the dark helmet, Number 5. Dark Helmet was a play on Darth Vader from the original film, but he had a very whiny, often even frustrating voice. Then there are the crazy one-liners, which feel completely unhinged and not like something a writer would put in. However, Moranis later revealed that most of the dialogue was improvised, and he continued by saying that playing the character was like channeling every childhood tantrum into one role. Brooks, seeing this on screen, was amazed and just let him roll with it. And later, crew members even explained that the cameraman often had to stop for a few seconds after outrageous laughter during his various takes. Perhaps it's why Dark Helmet feels like such an authentic character. Number 6. Jabba the Hutt was an iconic character in Star Wars, representing sloth, but having this character in Spaceballs would have proven a challenge. So, Brooks changed it up a bit, calling it Pizza the Hutt. However, Brooks insisted that it look as realistic as possible, with artificial hot cheese being used for the costume, with added slime over a rubber base. The result? Richard Caron, who played the role, suffered real burns from the costume, and it became so intolerable that Caron quit once Brooks demanded retakes. It was such a horrific costume that Dom DeLuise, who voiced the character, outright refused to even touch the costume. Perhaps using a toy model would have been better, but this wasn't overlooked in the sci-fi niche. Number 7. In 1997, George Lucas remastered the original Star Wars trilogy, which led to a revival in everything Star Wars. Mel Brooks wanted to create another film, but was unsure of whether he'd be able to pull it off with a screwball comedy budget. So, Brooks chose the route of animation, and Spaceballs, the animated series, was released in 2008. It flew largely under the radar and was only picked up by G4 and Canada's Super Channel. Unfortunately, it didn't turn into a success, with the main cast not returning for the reprisal of their roles. The series only ran for one season, showing 13 episodes. Number 8. When Lonestar jammed the radars and Dark Helmet yelled that only one man would give him the raspberry, this was all improvised. But the red stuff running down the monitor, it seemed authentic, and a good wordplay on the word jam. Yet, Brooks later revealed that real jam was actually used for the scene, but this turned into a much bigger problem than the crew had originally foreseen. The jam clogged up the ventilation systems, and the crew had to stop filming afterwards as a mission of cleaning had to be completed. But let's not forget about Michael Winslow, who added the real humor that made the scene pop. Number 9. Michael Winslow is best known for his ridiculous voices and sounds in the hit series Police Academy. Creating the radar sound would have cost the production up to $1,000, but Winslow could do all this naturally. Winslow's talent would create all these noises naturally, before Moranis once again stole the scene with his incredible humor. Number 10. In one of the studio notes, the studio requested that Brooks add more visual gags. They needed something that would visually draw in the viewer and keep them laughing, not just relying on the incredible acting. So, Brooks took a shot at them. Two guys, two big combs, literally combing the desert. This was as literal as Brooks could have taken the notes. But then something happened. One of the combs broke mid-take, and the crew didn't have a backup. They simply stopped and taped the comb back together. And if you think it was simply just a small bowl of sand, you'd be wrong. The scene was actually filmed at the Imperial Sand Dunes National Park, near Yuma, Arizona. Then there's the main character, Lonestar. Number 11. Let's face it, when you think of Star Wars and the good guys, two names come to mind, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. But when creating Spaceballs, Mel Brooks wanted a single character that resembled both protagonists. So, Lonestar was created, and Brooks allowed Pullman to do the research, where he studied both Star Wars characters to find his own blend of swagger and humor that would fit the character. Essentially, he transformed Lonestar from a boring idea into the Millennium Falcon knockoff driving, vest-wearing idiot that still gets the princess. This was pure comedic gold. But speaking of the Millennium Falcon, it was actually in the film. Number 12. Eagle 5, a rip-off version of the Millennium Falcon, was nothing more than a modified Winnebago. But Mel Brooks wanted to at least pay some tribute to the Millennium Falcon. His initial idea was to have it fly around in space, but this would have cut too much into the budget. Brooks settled for having it parked in the lot adjacent to the diner, where it can be clearly seen as Barf and Lonestar enter. Perhaps Han Solo and Chewie had just finished their meal, or they were out for a quick leak in the local bathroom. Nevertheless, this is one of the overlooked Easter eggs in the film. Number 13. From Blazing Saddles to the sounds of Young Frankenstein, Mel Brooks always finds a way to put himself in the movies. In Spaceballs, he actually played two roles, Yogurt and President Scrub. Now, Yogurt was a play on the character of Yoda, but the makeup for the scene was so intense that Brooks could only film for a few hours per day. It was revealed that the gold paint used for the character irritated his skin, and he could barely move when wearing the suit. Yet, Brooks insisted on playing both roles, stating that it was the only way he could ensure the jokes landed as intended. Number 14. John Candy, who plays the role of Barf, is a direct take on Chewbacca. Yet, the main difference is that Chewie had a fully prepared suit that would give him that teddy bear appearance and make him iconic. However, several attempts failed at providing Candy with a good suit, so the idea was finally scrapped. It was replaced with a 30-pound battery pack, strapped onto his back, with 3 technicians controlling the tail and ears. But Rick Lazzarini, who controlled the ears, got a few shouts from Candy, who believed that he was overdoing it with the ears. At least Rick finally took over the role of Pizza the Hut when Karen bailed. Number 15. For years, fans have been asking Mel Brooks about the possibility of a Spaceballs sequel. In fact, the initial title became a running gag in Hollywood, called Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. But Brooks said he'd only film it if Moranis came back. but the actor stepped away from Hollywood to focus on raising his children. This didn't stop Brooks, with multiple drafts reportedly being drawn up, but ended up on the shelf. Then, in June 2025, Amazon MGM revealed that a Spaceballs sequel would be released in 2027. So far, it is titled Spaceballs 2: The Schwartz Awakens. But what did George Lucas actually think of the film? Number 16. One of the biggest concerns Mel Brooks had was what George Lucas would think about the comedy spoof on his career's work. Lucas was invited as one of the first to see the test screening. And, to everyone's surprise, Lucas loved it. He called it a loving spoof, even stating that his only regret was not thinking of yogurt first. Perhaps this is why Lucasfilm was so quick to help the film in post-production and marketing. Brooks even went on to say that having the approval of Lucas gave him the confidence to keep pushing the boundaries. Spaceballs completed the Mel Brooks goal of spoofing every major niche, but one of his biggest moments came more than a decade earlier, when Gene Wilder threatened him to stop acting. Check out this video of Young Frankenstein next to find out why.